Hi, I'm Deana with the Matadoras, and we've got Lizzie here. Today is a beautiful day. It is New Year's Eve, and we're about to embark on 2025. And I think there's a lot of you out there like us that are hoping that 2025 will be a much better year. Oh, we can only hope. Anyway, but today we're going to talk about some things that I feel would resonate with just about everybody out there in our audience. This would be depression and loneliness. We all have times in our lives when we just get in these ruts of depression. And, sometimes it's a chemical reaction that we have to think about and maybe get some medical intervention or medication. And sometimes life has just been really rough and there's just a one, two, three, four, five, and then a knockout punch. And then we get to that place. And maybe you're just at a dead end somewhere in your life and you don't know how to wiggle out. But Lizzie has very generously offered to talk about what she's been dealing with lately and be very honest and vulnerable in her struggles so that she can help any of you out there to touch on how you feel, what you're going through, and the fact that you're not alone. So, Lizzie, thank you so much for just having the courage to share what you've been dealing with and maybe some tips on things that help you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deana. Great introduction. First of all, I think talking about depression is a very hard subject for anybody to talk about. And I think it's really hard when someone finally admits, I think I'm really battling depression. I think it's something we think, oh, I'm not depressed. And then you look back and you're going, well, maybe I am. And then just kind of come to terms with that. But so as Deana said, this is December 31st, 2024. And I've had kind of like a series of situations in my personal life and work life since July of 2024. And with that, July, it was like instantaneous. For example, I had someone very close to me become very ill. I've had my oldest son with suicidal ideations and had to come and we had to have kind of watch him for a couple of weeks as he was kind of battling some things. And then I was put on this jury that was an armed robbery. And then I've had some weird stuff happen. And then things with my car that almost got me stalled on a highway, which thank goodness it all worked out. But there was also a lot of other things that were it wasn't just like one thing, one major event. When Rex and when I left him and I was divorcing him, I think I went through a depression and a really hard time, but that was like a big single major event. This was like one thing after another. And it wasn't just me, it was people close to me. And then on top of it, my health, I could not seem to stay healthy. I can't tell you how many weekends I've spent in bed trying to recover. I got to a point where I have to just even take more time off from work here and there. And my things that I'm passionate about was the Matadoras. It's helping women and men too, but mostly we help women. And I felt like I had nothing to give because I was just physically, mentally, and emotionally drained. I had nothing anywhere. And then I think I had some really good days and I think, okay, I'm getting ready to turn. And then all of a sudden I fall apart. It was just one thing after another. And then it got to the point where I didn't want to tell anybody anything. Right? Even Deana knows that. Sometimes it takes me a little while and she'll be like, why didn't you tell me this? And I'm like, well, I think because I had to process through it, or it's like, oh, here we go again, another incident. And you want to think that tomorrow is a new day, right? I think we all desire that tomorrow's a new day. We're going to feel better. And then you wake up and it's a repeat of the yesterday. The emotions, the physical, the mental. And so how do we move forward? I think it was people there for me, supporting me. I think I continued trying to seek what was holding me back as far as physically with my health. I had things with my heart and so on, and then some other stress factors. And those all caused the fatigue. I was also commuting 5 days a week. And that was taking 10 plus hours out of my week just doing that. And that doesn't, if you're working full time, not only do you go to work, you also have to get ready when you get home for the next day to make it more smooth the next morning. And if you're just continually battling these little things to survive, and that was literally what I was doing since July, was surviving. And I don't want to just to be a survivor, but I had to kind of go through the process of what are my problems. I think Deana and I would hash out my health, things to do for my health. I think with it, I felt some isolation and loneliness, especially when my son went down a little bit. I think that was a time that I wish I could have called his father and know that we could have worked and walked side by side. And so it made me like struggle inwardly, emotionally, because I felt more alone in these situations. One thing I finally did was I woke up one day and I said, I'm going to move. I'm going to move so I do not have to like commute 5 days a week. So I moved close to one of my job sites, which now that's given me probably about 6 hours back of my week, which is a lot because I don't know if any of you commute and you have a lot of traffic, because I live in the San Diego area, that it's exhausting. And sometimes that hour trip home is like 2 hours because of just one accident or one situation on the road. And then you walk in the door and all you want to do is sit on the couch and drool because you've been stuck in traffic. So I think I went through a process when I actually in line to get my car washed. And I could not tell you what I did. I mean, I've done the car wash, I don't know how many times. And somehow I hit the car in front of me. I was humiliated. They were like lecturing me. I just sat there and stared at them because I don't know what I did. I still couldn't tell you what I did. And then, but right before that, I had gone over a median because I knew I was tired. I knew I shouldn't have driven, but sometimes you still have to go do these things, right? And I went over a median and I went home and I'm really battling a lot here. This has literally sucked a lot of my energy. And I didn't even know where to start. And then through it all, I thought, I think I'm depressed on top of it. I didn't have a major life event, but I was really depressed. And it took me a long time to admit that because I always try to think that tomorrow's a new day. Yeah, we're going to have rough days, but tomorrow's going to look better. Get a good night's sleep, take care of yourself. But this was a longevity. This had been since July and we're in December. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm really depressed. And I realized as I was kind of trying to work through the process that with my depression, there's emotional stress, there's physical stress, and there's mental. And I realized with a lot of my physical and my mental, it triggered the exhaustion emotionally, which also triggered the depression. And I know there are different routes when we go through life when we're trying to deal with our depression. And one thing I really believe in still to this day is I think it's really important to eat well, exercise. I really would encourage people to do some journaling. It doesn't mean you have to write everything down. Sometimes it's the hardest time to do it. But I do find that if I can look at 3 positives every day, it's like, people would say gratitude or whatever. And if you guys have been following us, Deana and I have talked about it before, finding 3 things minimum a day that you're grateful for. And sometimes it's something as simple as I got up, I went to work, I made dinner. But those are all positives. And it's those little things that you can do to help yourself as you're trying to powerhouse through. And it's like when working with depression, one thing that I had to really think about when we go to hire someone, let's say a health coach or a trainer in a gym, we know that it's like one and done. Like you think, okay, I go work out, I'm going to be better. I'm going to be thinner. I'm going to be stronger. but it's a commitment. It doesn't take overnight, but working through depression doesn't take overnight either. And sometimes it takes us longer, some of us longer to walk through it and get on the other side. And sometimes some people just bounce back very quickly. And as Deana knows, I tend to be someone that bounces back really quickly. And I think what was really hard for me was when I finally said, I'm not bouncing back quickly. In fact, when I finally sat down and told Deana just a couple of weeks ago what I was dealing with, and then I was dealing with depression, I mean, it was really hard for me to verbalize it. It's still hard for me to verbalize I'm depressed. I don't want to stay here. I'm not going to stay here. I'm actually doing really good today. So for my good days, I tell people just do more. If you got a really good day, enjoy it, embrace it, do as much as you can. And if you wake up the next day, that's good too. Because sometimes we do go through the motions because we know we have to fight through it. We know we have to kind of weather the storm, as my father would say, weather the storm, sweetheart. And, you get up, you do the best you can do. And sometimes it'd be okay, I have to talk to a doctor. I may need to get on a season of medication. Maybe make time for a therapist. And I know if work and family busyness makes it like really stressful to make that time, you got to think about the time that you're making to have a better tomorrow. And give yourself grace as you're walking through all of this to get to the other side. And realize that if you're doing all the right steps, don't think because you've done a day or two of gratitude that you are going to be a lot better tomorrow. Just realize I'm working out my emotions. I've got to just figure this out. And then what do you do, Deana? I think one thing that you and I talked about was, what do you do when you have taken all these steps and you are taking all these steps and you realize I'm still battling the depression?
I think, yeah, that's a good question, Lizzie. I mean, currently I'm not dealing with depression, but I have had times in my life where I felt that I was, and I think we all do. And I know for me, sometimes the most important thing is getting to the bottom of why. And I like that you said journaling, because for me, there are times when my life is just so chaotic that I'm not listening to my thoughts, and I'm not listening to what I'm thinking about. I'm not listening or paying attention to my emotions. I'm just going through life, and I'm going through life quickly, and everything has to be done, and it has to be done perfectly. And there's these time constraints. And then of course there's these things that come into your life that are disappointing and that hurt and that you can't control. And sometimes we always have those seasons where all of those things just compound, but you're so busy just trying to get through your daily life that you're not really paying attention to the fact that it's building up incrementally and sitting on you. And so I think that for me, the first step, if I notice that I'm not bouncing back, is to dig a little deeper and really figure it out. It could just be something as simple as that you were, actually adopting some healthy activities that kept you feeling happier and more proud of yourself. Like, for instance, maybe you were eating healthier at one point. Maybe you were, making time to work out. Maybe you were doing more self-care and building in time for relaxation. Maybe you were asking people for help at some point in your life and you stopped doing that. Maybe something happened that made you not want to ask people anymore. But, go back to a time where you really were happy and life was better than it is now, and compare that time and compare to now and see what's changed and see what's different. Sometimes it's sneaky things that, we haven't really noticed. So journaling, I believe, can really, really help, and just to go deeper as to what the problem is. But then also remember, there's always a chemical component in our brains. So if you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing and it's just not working, it definitely would be a good idea to go see your doctor. And if you don't have insurance, a lot of practitioners, they will give you a cash pay option. And if you ask, sometimes they'll only charge you what insurances would definitely pay them. So you can ask that question, be the squeaky wheel. I know it's really hard to do, but ask and go see a practitioner. Sometimes just one visit can really unravel some things. If you've had depression in your family, that's a big sign. If you've battled depression in your past, that's a big sign, but really get to that component of it. It may not be a chemical issue at all. It just might be something that you hadn't thought of. And I remember when I was married to Rex, our same ex, there was a time where I was going through a lot of depression. And I honestly just thought it was because I was busy and overwhelmed. I had compartmentalized all of the things that he had done because he was constantly coming back asking me for forgiveness. And once he asked for forgiveness for what he did, then we weren't supposed to talk about it anymore. It was just supposed to go away. And I was supposed to forget about it, and we went on as normal. And that's how he liked it. So I could never really process through all the pain and hurt and betrayal that I had gone through. And therefore, after some time, even if he's not actively, wasn't actively acting out his sexual addiction tendencies or his spending money until we were broke and didn't have food for the 4 kids, even if he wasn't actively doing that, I would go through these times where I was heavy and depressed, realizing all that had added up. It had just built up over time and I hadn't realized it. It's kind of like when all of a sudden you wake up in the morning and your back is out and you're like, I didn't do anything. I wasn't playing pickleball. But it's that overtime stress, and eventually something's going to give out. So really looking at the deeper parts to see where this is coming from can be the catalyst to help you feel better.
And I would agree with that and that's what I had to do, was sit down and really, why am I feeling this way? I think there was a multitude of things. So one of the things, if there are things that you can eliminate in your life and the stress factors, for me, realizing that the commute 5 days a week was very difficult. And I was living with 2 to 3 of my other sons. We were roommates. They were living with me or whatever. And I just woke up one day and I said, guys, I think I need to move out. I need to be closer to my jobs. It's interesting anyway, living with your adult sons that are bachelors, as I love them. We had such a good time and there's things that I so miss. But there was other things in my life that I needed to get myself back. I don't want to say back on track because sometimes we're just meant to be on a different track anyway. But to get myself where I feel like I have some rest and I'm rejuvenated, because there could be reasons for your stressors or your exhaustion. Because I believe for me, it was my mental and physical exhaustion that triggered my emotional exhaustion and then triggered the depression. For me, it was different this time around. It was just a lot of knocks, a lot of things going on and getting at me at different places. And also the humiliation of just sometimes mentally checking out. Like, I can't do this. I can't even, like I said, going over a median, that's just not me. It was really, it was kind of embarrassing. No, it wasn't kind of embarrassing. It was extremely embarrassing. But I had to sit back and go, this was a bigger problem. There's a bigger problem. And I have to continually shave things out of my life and cut things out of my life, so that I can focus on my physical health, which also helps my mental health, and therefore does not trigger the emotional stressors that I was being triggered with. It's so rewarding when you have those really good days. But if you are someone in a season and you're really trying to walk through the depression, or you're really trying to work through everything, continue to look for ways to cut things out of your life that cause stress. And we know sometimes, like Deana said, like Rex, sometimes you're hanging in there in a relationship that does nothing but pull you down over and over. So is it bad enough that you knew for years that you need to leave, but you're just afraid to leave? It's really, sometimes you have to evaluate those things. Because one thing I know Deana and I both hear a lot, well, I've tried this, I've done that, I've keep trying. but they're still hanging in there in areas of their life that are triggering these emotions, triggering these
Oh,
stressors.
oh yeah. Oh, Lizzie, 100%. And I think that's one component too. I think that once you really look at your life, I think you have to get a little bit desperate. Just like you making that move, it was a comfortable place to be. It was terrifying to not share rent in such an expensive city that you live in, and to go out on your own. But you had to have that peaceful place to recuperate. You guys, listen, if you're on a ship and that ship is sinking to the bottom of the ocean like the Titanic, and you're going to die, what did they do in the olden days, or even probably the current days when a ship was sinking? They started cutting the weight. They started cutting the weight. And even if it was important things that they were throwing into the ocean, they did it because they had to live. And so they only had to keep the things that were 100% necessary for survival. You have to look at this like a sinking ship. If you are battling depression and it's not lifting, and it is the circumstances of your life and not a chemical medical issue, you have got to look at it like your ship is sinking. Where can you cut back? In other words, can you get, if you're a caretaker, can you get some help with that? I know it's easy to say, no, I can't. But remember, there are people that love you around you, and they were probably willing to help, even if they just took the kids or the toddlers a half day a week for you. Look at your life and look at the things that are pulling your energy, that are taking from you. And they can be good things. It doesn't mean they're bad things. It could be friendships in your life that are very needy, that are always calling you and needing advice. It could be obligations like volunteering somewhere. There could be so many different things. And it could be things that you really enjoy. But right now, do you have the energy to get those things done? And are you feeling guilt because you're not doing them well, or you're not completely engaged? Whatever it may be, you need to truly look at what is putting into your life and what is taking out of your life. And you've got to start cutting some of those things while you're in survival mode. You can always go back to that if you want to. There's plenty of chances to be really busy and productive and volunteer and do extra things in your life. But like Lizzie said, and that was a great point, Lizzie, she had to start cutting things. She had to start looking at the stressors. Now she's in a quieter home where it's clean. Those seem like small things. It's clean, it's
Huge.
organized. Yes, she has a bigger financial burden, but this trade was well worth it. She has less of a commute. She's closer to the things that are important to her. So those are little things, but they add up. They all add up to the big load that you're carrying. So please take a really strong assessment of your life.
Yeah, because there's no cookie cutter. Like everybody's like everything. Everybody wants everything in a box because it make it so much easier to really process, to figure it out, to work through it because everybody understands. But we're not cookies cutters. We are individuals, and it's a process to really take the time and possibly be quiet within ourselves to really evaluate what our struggles are. And that's why too journaling helps because it helps you look back. It helps you look, oh, wow, I'm really battling with this. One thing that I've noticed that a lot of people do too is they have expectations that their marriage or their relationships are going to get better. Or they have these expectations in certain situations in their lives. And then when those expectations are not met, it's another trigger. And sometimes when we keep making these expectations, it'll put us down a rabbit hole of depression, because the expectations are never met. I always encourage people, do not have don't have expectations. Sometimes you have to let go because you might be surprised if you let go. And I'll give you a little example. I was going to want to move to Carlsbad. That was my goal when I moved out of the boys. I wanted apartments. I've been looking at apartments over there. I wanted a place where I could walk to the ocean or ride a bike. I love the ocean. And I kept thinking that's what I was going to do. So I had these expectations. But then I would have still commuted to work when I did move out. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to have to move closer to one of my job sites so I do not have to commute 5 days a week. And I went to an apartment that one of my coworkers actually recommended. I'd been checking out all these other apartments in these different places, and they were all lovely. And so I went to check out this apartment. And I thought, oh, it's kind of quiet. It's okay. But when I saw my back view at this apartment, it was incredible. I sit on a golf course. And it's cheaper than anything else I was looking at. And it's an absolutely stunning view every day. I have a hill where I can see the sunrise when it's not foggy. And then as the sun rises, the colors are incredible. And then you can hear the birds chirp after the sun comes up. But what I was trying to say in all that was, if I went on what my expectation, what I planned to do, and I keep that tight hold on what I felt like I needed and wanted, when I finally let go and just said, you know what, it's more about my health, more about my just re-energizing myself and not having to drive so much, I think I ended up on the better end of everything. And sometimes if we just let go of our expectations, we may have those potentials of something more beautiful because something else came along and we were open to check it out. And it helps with the depressions, and it helps with all the emotion things that go with it.
I love that. And I think sometimes our dashed expectations can be 100% the reason that we're depressed too.
Yeah.
You know, like for instance, like when we were told as wives of sex addict and narcissist and all the other things he was, you know, financial abusive, as wives of him, the expectation was if you prayed and you were a good Christian wife and you did all the right things and you read all the right books and you did everything, then God was going to intervene. He was going to step in. He was going to make your relationship okay. That was what we really, truly believed and thought. So you do all the things, right? You do all the things, you kill yourself doing it all perfectly, and nothing happens. Matter of fact, it probably gets worse because the more compliant that you get and the more, I don't want to say the word submissive, but that is a trigger word. The more submissive and demure and all the things the Bible talks about with the wife, the more that they love and do for their spouse, that they're going to be this woman of honor and it'll change the husband. Well, that is good in a healthy relationship. That probably does work. I really feel like a healthy person is going to respond to a loving wife who is forgiving and kind and all those things. Not a dysfunctional, toxic relationship. That's like asking a terrorist to be nice to you because you're showing them kindness. A terrorist is evil. Like they're not going to show you any kindness. That's their goal in life, is to dominate and take over. So you're asking this terrorist of your life to do something that is against their nature. It's not going to happen. So again, those expectations, and then we get disappointed, and then we don't know what to do. Now we don't know what to do with our faith. We don't know what to do with, where do we go from here? If we can't believe that there's a solution in our behavior and praying and doing all the right things, well then that means there's no hope. That means it's hopeless. But sometimes you have to get to that hopeless state to realize, I think I've been looking at things the wrong way. I don't think this is the actual truth. I think my expectations are misaligned. I think this person is who they are. I think they were like that before I ever met them. And I think they'll be like that long after I'm gone.
Yeah.
And that's one of those crises of beliefs that you have to come to in your life, but it also is the catalyst for change. You know, so sometimes depression and, you know, your expectations being dashed can be a good thing, but if you're not looking at it in truth, it's nothing but a burden to you.
Well, and I think it's living, are we living in a state of denial, thinking that tomorrow's going to be so much better? And then here it is 10, 15 years later, and it's not.
Right.
So it's like, then you have to unravel. But I think the one thing, Deana, and you and I are both saying, if you are in a feeling of hopelessness or feeling stuck or depressed, it's going to take you sitting down and really evaluating, what do I need to work on? What do I have control to work on and to change?
Right.
And
Exactly.
get out. Yeah.
Good key word is, what can I control in my life and what can I not? Because there are going to be things you can't control, which of course always, we talked about this in our grief podcast.
Yeah.
The things you can't control can cause you tremendous grief and depression.
Yeah.
So yeah, good point, Lizzie. And then also, let's talk about loneliness, because I've definitely had some ladies that have reached out with when you're single and you're going through all this alone, and you did touch on it earlier. But, what do you do? What do you do to combat the loneliness of not having that partner to go through these hard times with, and to support you and to always hear you out? Like, how do you mitigate that?
That's a really good question. For me, my faith is huge. For me, it's that my meditation, my prayer life, finding the scriptures that speak to me. And if the Bible doesn't speak to you, there's beautiful quotes out there. And realize that, give yourself grace to know that we will have seasons of grief or loneliness when we are in these situations. It doesn't take a magic wand, but I will say, for those that are in a season of being lonely, it's really not the time to find that significant other because you have to have peace with where you are. And I have peace because of my abuse from my first husband, and then all the lying and manipulation that I found out in the double life from my second husband, our husband, Rex, that I've enjoyed having the freedom to be me without someone questioning everything that I do. So in my season of living alone, I'm actually embracing my singleness. And that does not mean that I don't have moments or waves or windows of that loneliness. So if you are stuck in it and it's also triggering that depression, I really want to encourage you to find an outlet that gives you peace and joy to give back. Sometimes I think in our loneliness, we look at how can I receive? But it might be a season that it's what can I do to help others?
I like that.
And being involved in the community, whether it's your church group or it's another community outlet that just feeds you. And a lot of times, if you're an introvert like me, because Deana and I talk about this a lot, Deana is an extrovert and she is fed by people. Like if she's worn out, I mean, she has times where she'll say, and Deana, correct me if I'm wrong, she has times where she'll say, okay, I kind of need to be quiet. But for her, it feeds her to be with people. If you're an introvert like me and you're in the state of singleness, it's harder to push yourself out there in new places. And I think at this point, if you can just make a goal to find something, one thing, don't overpromise and underdeliver, I think is how they say it. Underpromise and overdeliver sounds better. So just find one thing where you'll be with a group of people. It doesn't mean that person those people have to be with you all the time or you always have to go do things. But it is nice to know that there's people there for you, your little community of in-person people. So loneliness definitely can trigger a lot of depression. And I know a lot of, especially women who are in the state of singleness, they miss having a partner. But yet some would say, I'd much rather be alone than be with somebody, but I still feel that loss. I still grieve over that loss.
Very good. I love that. So to sum that one up, it would be, especially as an introvert, to really push yourself out there and get a group that you connect with. Make yourself do some activities, make yourself get out there, and to give back, to really focus on giving out and helping others and maybe dedicating some time to other people instead of focusing on you and what you don't quite have yet.
Yeah.
That's great. Anything else that you would suggest, Lizzie?
I would say that if you are in a season of singleness, especially, I know a lot of people that are lonely in relationships. I think that's the worst, which triggers the depression because you have that significant other, but yet you feel like you're more alone. It's like going to a party and you feel lonely. So if that's the problem, that also evaluate that. But if you are literally in a season where you're like, I'm single and I'm not interested in dating, but I'm really battling this loneliness which causes some depression, then figure and find, it's again, there's no cookie cutter in this, but it is important to really find those outlets that keep you busy and taking care of yourself too. Like sometimes it's just getting out and joining like a Pilates class. I've been to Pilates where these group of women, they're like buddies. They've seen each other so many times. So it's just finding that one thing and making yourself
Yeah.
go.
Oh yeah. And it can be a singles group. You can
Yeah.
join a singles group where everybody's single and they totally get it. Like they all understand they're in the same boat.
Yeah.
They have the loneliest times, and so you could reach out, have a whole support group, and it doesn't have to be every day, but you could reach out when you're really feeling it and just ask them for coffee, and just have that time. I know it feels like a couple's world, and I think sometimes singles just feel like they don't belong because it's a couple's world, and if they do, it's just they're the third wheel. There are a lot of singles out there, and even that Meetup app that we talked about on one of our podcasts,
Yeah.
that's not just for men and women. The Meetup is actually for, I mean, my daughter found some of her best friends by doing the Meetup. You actually can just pick a friend and put in all the demographics and all of your values and beliefs, and they match you up with somebody in your area. And she wanted a mom with toddlers that had her same political views and some of her other beliefs, and found like a best friend with a toddler, her toddler's age, and they get together and have a ball. So really surround yourself with people that you connect with, and make those, reach out and make those connections.
Yeah.
It's going to be time, and a lot of you are busy and a lot of you have very little time to spare. But remember, when you're investing time in things that give back to your soul, that time is well spent. That time will actually give you energy. It'll give back. And that's where we were talking earlier about when you're giving out, giving out, giving out, giving out, which a lot of us moms are, especially if you're a single mom, it's overwhelming how much you give out, even with adult kids. And especially if you're a grandma, same. So if you're giving out, giving out, giving out, giving out, you have got to have those relationships that give back, that you can just sit there and spill your guts, or you can just laugh and do things that are meaningless and just have a great time. I think a lot of times, the loneliness factor is you are just empty as well. You've given, 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 and there's nothing coming back in.
Yeah.
So if you're one of those that is the extreme giver, then the advice would be the opposite. Stop going and volunteering and giving and giving and giving to everybody. At
Yes.
least stop some of them, and focus on things that give back. And if you need a visual, draw a circle and then draw everything in your life, all the people, all the activities, all the events, everything scheduled, not scheduled, and draw a little arrow. The ones that feed your soul and energize you and give back. And this includes relationships. You might even have girlfriends or guy friends that every time they call, they want something. Either they want to chat about a problem they're having, or they want money, or they want your time, or they want something. And that can also be churches. And not to be ugly, but a lot of churches are like, can you help this? Can you volunteer this? Can you do this? Can you do that? And it gives you a sense of purpose when you're helping all the time, but it also can be something that's constantly taking and adding to everything else it's taking. So draw an arrow coming in for everything that gives back to your soul and feeds your soul and gives you rest and energy. And then draw a line coming out of the circle with an arrow pointing the other direction for anything that actually takes your energy. And it can be good or bad. It can be good things. Volunteering is a good thing. Helping in the church is a good thing. But is it taking away your energy? Is it taking away what you need to take care of yourself in a better way? And see the ratio of outgoing energy and incoming energy, and really take a look at that. I had to do that one time in my life, and I had to start cutting the things that were sinking the ship, because my kids were small. I had 4 little kids, and at that time and moment in time, I was a single mom for a short time, and the kids were all doing activities, and I was volunteering for the church. I was taking multiple phone calls from women, doing a women's ministry on the side. I had friends that always needed advice. I mean, it was incredible. When I did that circle, it was like so many arrows going out, 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 out. Even with friends, so many friends, arrows going out. I had very few friends in my life at that time that would even ask me, "How are you? How's it going? Let's talk. Do you want to chat? Do you want to go to lunch? What can I do for you? What do you need? Can I bring you something? Oh, you're sick. Let me help you." I had almost none of that because I kept attracting and choosing people that needed me. And it was exhausting. I mean, I was losing my mind. I feel like I was on the verge of a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
So please take a look at all of that when you're talking about even a loneliness factor.
Oh yeah. I would say that if you've been in it for years, either it could be a chemical imbalance, and it could be that you have needed to take some drastic steps to change and cut things out of your life that you have either been afraid of or guilty of or whatever else, because I think there's so many emotions. But nobody's going to take care of you but you. And that's sad to say because I don't like to be a me culture, but it's more like there's a reason why I'm still here. There's a reason why I'm battling this depression. I think if you are single and you battle like loneliness on occasion, that's normal, right? I think if it's a long term and you feel it every day, then that's when maybe some bigger changes need to be made to kind of combat that loneliness. I don't feel alone all the time that I feel depressed. I have windows of it. And that's just because it'd be nice to call my son's dad just to talk about our kids, right? But we haven't talked in, I want to say 5 years. My kids have had nothing to do with him in 25 years. So it's not even an option for me. So when I have those moments, I just say, there's just nothing else I could do. I have family, I have friends that I can call, but even still, sometimes you have to kind of journey through those feelings on your own to kind of process it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Lizzie?
No, I think that this could be another topic too, because there's so many things that can trigger a lot of these depression, loneliness. I think there's more we could talk about later in the future. So I know this will probably be a topic we come back to again. And if you have any questions about it or you would like for us to talk about it, we would love for you to send us questions or thoughts, feelings. So that way, when we talk about them, we'd love to say your name and say, hey, so-and-so wanted us to talk about this. So here we go. Anything else, Deana?
Nope. Good to go.
Well, you guys, I just want to say thank you for your support with us. We care deeply about each and every one of you. And we just want to say thank you for following us, for, just giving us a good word. And just know that we love you and we look forward to 2025 with you.
We sure do. Thank you so much, everybody.